Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted that you're in class with us today. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vin Finelli. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah, it is morning.
It is. You know, it's the morning after the second St. Valentine's Day massacre. The first St. Valentine's Day massacre was in 1929 in Chicago on the north side during the Prohibition era. And it happened on February 14th. And it was because there was a struggle with gangs. There was a gang on the south side led by Al Capone, and there was some other gangs, and he decided he was going to straighten this out so that he would organize crime a little better. So that's what happened, and 7 men were murdered in February of 1929 in Chicago. So it was a hit ordered by Al Capone. Well, the second St. Valentine's Day massacre happened where 17 were murdered at a high school at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And the reason I'm mentioning this is obviously it was horrific. But what's the reaction? Well, the reaction from some well-known people is just beyond discussion. But let me try. So there's a gal who can't seem to stand the way she looks from one minute to the next. Her name is Kim Kardashian West. Okay, she will change her appearance at will, changing her hair color. She'll bend over every way you can think of to get some publicity. And she sends this message via Twitter to everyone. And she says, quote, "We owe it to our children and our teachers to keep them safe while at school. Prayers won't do this. Action will. Congress, please do your job and protect Americans from senseless gun violence." Well, Congress has done the job of causing gun violence by encouraging and approving video games at the level of people who sign up to be mercenaries for the government. Okay, they are desensitized with video games, so the young recruits in the military get to watch these games of shoot 'em up, blow 'em up. I didn't do very well that time, so let's hit the reset button. Let's kill more. Let's maim more. Let's blow more. No, not enough. Let's keep hitting the reset button until we kill everybody. So the shoot 'em, blow 'em up, and then reset. It was a tool that was used. And, of course, that's a mass media tool or a mass tool that you can buy for your young children to teach them that they can shoot them and blow them up, and then they can hit the reset button and everything will be good so they can do a better job of raining down more destruction. Well, Congress funded wars. They funded new weapons, better ways of mass murder. And so for Kim Kardashian, my message to you is Congress is the problem. Okay? So don't expect Congress to fix the problem. Congress is the problem. So here's a guy, Mark Ruffalo. He sends out the message, prayers without accordant action are silent lies told to oneself, heard by no God, amounting to nothing. Action is the language of truth, the prayers of the saints. And Mia Farrow, another well-known personality, says, "Sir, we need more than prayers and condolences. We need national gun legislation." We have national gun registration. Here's another one. Ellen DeGenerate. "No words, no action, no laws are enough until we end this epidemic of school shootings in our country. My heart is with the students and parents of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School." Let me say that one more time. No words, no action, no laws are enough until we end this epidemic of school shootings in our country. So, class, we have gun-free zones, all around schools. That doesn't seem to be working. So when we had Sandy Hook many years ago, I went on the radio immediately and I said, I have the answer. It's really, really simple. And it won't cost very much at all, if anything. The NRA wanted to have armed guards at the schools. And what I talked about when I mentioned this idea that I have is that, okay, so you have an armed guard at the front door. Great. What about the back door? What about the side doors? What about the children who are on the playground? Where is this guy going to be? Is he going to be everywhere? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, the laws of physics say he can't be everywhere. All right? So how can we solve this problem economically? Well, it's kind of easy. So there are people who have concealed carry permits who have been vetted by their local sheriff. How about if they stay on their jobs? They're already there. They already have the concealed carry permits. They're everywhere. There are people like me and others. You have your concealed carry permits. You've been trained. You've been certified. You've been inspected and accepted. And you're considered to be stable. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the concealed carry permit. All right, so additional training by the local sheriff in that county for those people who have those concealed carry permits who are employees of the school. And who are they? Well, they're janitors. They're maintenance people, custodians, teachers, administrators, principals, superintendents, from top to bottom, the employees at the school, concealed carry permit. They don't say, hey, look at my gun, look at my gun. They keep it really quiet. And now we let everybody in the country, in the world, know that there are people who are carrying loaded firearms ready to go in schools. And you don't know who they are. They could be anybody who's an employee, who has been a recipient of additional training. That puts on notice anybody who wants to come in to that school that they are likely to get return fire if they threaten the teachers, the employees, and the students. Just my thoughts. Rick, do you have a comment on that?
I absolutely concur. It all begins with education for quality of life. And the schools are are part of the problem themselves in terms of cursive and the level of education they're now requiring kids. It's an embarrassment for me. My even on a local level, right here in Grants Pass, there was a grade school that made national news because they showed a picture of a kid being punished, not having lunch, not being allowed to have lunch. He was in detention, and he was being punished, and a bunch of bleeding hearts came on and said he had a right to his lunch. And, I defended that grade school because I thought in the wake of national opinion, they held their ground and were validated. However, that same school just this last week became an embarrassment to me. You ought to see what their drinking fountain looked like. And when they held their business meeting in the center of the cafeteria, 2 tables, people just sitting around, the janitor was there laughing at everybody. My girlfriend is a retired first-grade school teacher from L.A., and they would not have allowed anything like that to happen down there. Now, the difference between L.A. and where I live is, where I live, there's only a 73% graduation in high school. That's the second worst in the nation. And it's because of the good old boy network that's here and the ARF, who gives a damn. And I've had enough, and I'm going to now start saying so publicly. It's an embarrassment. It is an no wonder there are more charter schools and homeschooling that's happening now, because the education from public schools are not up to standard. Period. End of that story. And when I was in second grade, I was required to study Latin. Sum est est, sumest est sunt. Now, I'm going to tell you something. This is an embarrassment in our educational system, and it's done with intent. And when they sit there and talk about, nobody had anything organized, and they wandered. They would start on a subject that was important. Let's talk about the playground. And that one piece over there where all that moss is growing, that's very slippery and dangerous for the kids. And you know what the janitor said? Ha 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 ha. Silly. He should be fired. I think the principal needs guidance from the school board. She's brand new. Nobody knows what they're doing or has any pride in what they're doing. And it's an embarrassment. That's why we have never been number one in the world in our educational systems except graduate school. And that's because graduate schools had the toys. That's all changing too. And now the United States is down in the world across the board in grade school, secondary school, high school, college, undergraduate, and now graduate school. We do not have the best universities in the country anymore. We do not have any high school that could even measure up to Sweden. Nothing. What's happening to America? It's fragmenting because of our leadership. And the leadership has found it more important to talk about marijuana laws and things of that nature than they have the education of a child, because, in fact, if you educate that child, these kinds of things wouldn't be happening. These are kids that have no reason to live. What are they going to do when they get out of high school? Exciting career in fast food development. It's terrible. And I'm broke. In other words, education is not going to make you more money, but education will give you a better quality of life. And from that point of view, I'm blessed.
You're absolutely right about education giving you a better quality of life. I mean, how many people have to call a plumber when they have a dripping faucet? With a little bit of education and maybe saying, you know what, I can get a book to learn how to fix this. They can fix things themselves and save money. Hey, we'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. DocRam.com. Class, there's a two-day regional conference in Missouri, West Plains, Missouri, March 8th and 9th. And Joel Salatin will be there, Joel, Salatin. And he's going to be talking about farming. And there's a beginning farmer certification program. There's going to be other speakers, and they'll be talking about small family farming. And it sounds like it's a great conference. It sounds so good that I'm going to be there. And if you want more information, it's AmericanSmallFarm.com. AmericanSmallFarm.com. Link on the website, usaprepares.com. If you want more information, you can call Patrice Jennings. And I'm going to give you her phone number, 417-293-0590. That's 417-293-0590. And, Rick, that's the conference that I mentioned. And I mentioned to Patrice Jennings that she should call you and see if you can make it to the next one. Not this one. It's kind of late for that, but the next one. Next year.
This summer, I've been invited out into Vermont at Sterling College, which is a university on agroforestry, hands-on. And they have a demonstration farm, and for 3 weeks in July, I will be teaching several new books on the internet, online courses from Sterling, and I'll be doing site teaching right there on site for 3 weeks up in Vermont. And I've got more information. I'm very excited to do this. I will be teaching the new small family farm for the 21st century, and the other course will be forest farming, how to farm in the forest woods using your canopy. Now, I have one final thing I wanted to say. My girlfriend, Julie, has some very definite opinions about this grade school and how it is not a showcase. All the door jambs are nicked from years of abuse and no painting. And if the janitor's job were to include one door jamb a day where he went in and touched up with paint, he would have 20 door jambs done in 20 days. And that just alone would change the kids' relationship to their education. And it starts with the little things. You don't wave a wand, hokey pokey, and it's all done. It requires chipping away every day with intent. That means that when I had all these file cabinets and Grace was visiting, what they did is they put them in boxes, and now every day I have to go down and sort things that are important to me and they're not. And I found letters I had forgotten from my mother and father that are now dead. I'm finding treasures. And it is how education works, chipping away at it a little bit every day. And I wished, I would hope that my girlfriend chooses to attack or become part of the school board, because they could care less. The people that we have here, it is an embarrassment for someone like me and the education that I have. And I'm talking about the formal and informal levels of library and the relationship of how a teacher feels about the subject they're teaching. This new movie that's out, the 1715 to Paris, is a true story played by the real people that did it in Paris. And the three people that were high school, grade school kids, they're living in Roseburg, Oregon, and they did this U.S. Air Force movie about the 1715 to Paris. And let me tell you, that just the little education that they got in military training saved lives. It saved a bunch of lives when this terrorist walked down the center of the train with an AK-47 and 300 rounds of bullets. Now, this thing that happened in Florida is, in a sense, kind of orchestrated. Why? Sandy Hook, number one, did not happen. That's an absolute fact. There's CBS, others have done stories on it. It was a experiment to train how to deal with this kind of thing. And how many people here know that Sandy Hook did not happen, that it was an orchestrated drill by FEMA? Now, that's a fact.
Look at some of the evidence.
That school was closed for 6 months.
Yeah, and it's demolished. The school is now demolished.
The videos that they showed, and they've never come clean with the public.
Okay, hold that thought. Let's talk more about that when we come back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Rick, many, many years ago, I had the opportunity to have lunch with a principal of a school system, high school. Usually once a week, and I'd have lunch with the superintendent and some others as well, and we would talk about the projects that I was working on, and I'd give them an update. And this one principal I'm talking about was a couple years younger than I, probably, but not many, so about my age. And I pulled into the school parking lot one day, and I was in my car, and I saw this car fly into the front driveway of the school. Doors flew open, and a couple guys ran out. I believe there were three of them. Three guys ran out, charged into the school, and they looked like they were ready to rumble. Okay? They looked like they were looking for a fight or looking to hurt someone in particular. And this happened very, very quickly. A couple seconds later, I saw these guys walking out backwards. All these guys walking out backwards. And in front of them, facing them, was the school principal. And he was probably going to beat them all up. Literally. Well, he was he was a karate instructor. and he was going to take off. I'm very serious about this. I saw it, and I know this guy is. You know, when we were at lunch, he's very, very calm, easy, even-tempered, easygoing. Doesn't look like you could rile him at all. However, he got these guys who were physically larger than he, and he backed them right out of school. I know another story of this guy. Now, I didn't see him do this, but one of the teachers who taught a specialized subject about my size was attacked. And this school had a terrazzo floor, which is like polished concrete, a really hard surface floor. And long wearing. But, if you fell on it, you could hurt yourself. Well, this student attacked this teacher, and the student was bigger than the teacher, and flipped him and dropped him on this terrazzo floor. And the principal saw it. The principal grabbed the student and put him in a grappling hold and told the student, now, if you just move even slightly, you're really going to get hurt. So the plan is don't move, because you're going to stay here until the police come. If you move, I'm going to hurt you. That's what happened. So do we need teachers and administrators like that? Absolutely. And if I were a superintendent and I were looking for an administrator or a principal or a vice principal of a school, I'd want to know about their academic qualifications or experience, and I'd also want to know how many karate tournaments have they successfully won. I'm serious. Now, in my dad's era, back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, I'd go and spend a couple hours on a weekend with my dad. He'd have some things to do, and he'd bring me to school with him. He was a school principal, and I'd sit at his desk, and that was a lot of fun. And, I'd open his desk drawer, and there'd be a whole bunch of knives. I say, Dad, what are these? And he goes, well, I had to confiscate them. Some children brought in some knives, and I said, what are they doing in your drawer? And he said, well, they're going to get them back at the end of the year. After school is over, they can have the knives back. But I'm going to hold them until that point. Now, was there a policy about that? I don't know. Was it the right thing to do? Well, he wasn't stealing personal property from the guys who brought knives in. Now, I don't think anybody brought knives in to school to go stab somebody in that era. I just think that they had them, they thought they were cool, and they wanted to show them to their friends. So to prevent any problems, my father just confiscated them. But he didn't have any shootings in his school. He didn't have any stabbings. I'm sure there were some rumble matches, where students would get annoyed with each other and kind of show some physical violence. But nothing ever made the paper because it was so severe and so violent that it brought the public's attention. So he handled it in a quiet way, and it worked. So I think that, from my perspective, I think that the students need to have a respect of the administration and the teachers, that the teachers and administration
that starts with the parents, too.
Right.
The parents are the ones that teach the children how to be disrespectful.
Right. I know another principal of a high school where I was a consultant, and he told me the story about this young girl who was in high school, and she would wear these provocative clothes or lack of clothes, and it was a problem. So the principal, talked to her, and it didn't work. He talked to her again, it didn't work. So finally he had a meeting with the parents. He said, I just want to bring this to your attention that this is a problem. And the father said, hey, from 8 to 3, she's all yours. Now I'm paraphrasing. Deal with it. Like, you fix it. Meaning the principal has to fix the attire that the girl was wearing that was unacceptable according to the Code of Conduct and Student Handbook policies. So the student was flagrantly abusing the standards of the school by wearing provocative clothes, and the father is saying, tough, you fix it. So you're right. The parents really, really are a large contributor to this problem because they are not raising their children. And I can tell you this, that if I ever did anything wrong in school when I was younger, what I faced with the administration or the teacher was nothing compared to what I would expect to get from my parents when I got home.
Yeah, that's the way it was.
Right.
That's
So
Walter
parents
Cronkite. That's the way it was.
Yeah. And that's not the way it is now.
No.
You know, you hear good, you know, he's a good boy. Well, what do you hear when there are these people who commit these horrific crimes? The parents say, well, he's a good boy. Really? He's a good boy. Either he's been set up and he is a good boy, or he's a terrible boy and the parents are a lot to blame for the actions of the children. Because, Rick, isn't it like half nurture and half nature?
Yeah, you need to have proactive parenting, and that's not happening anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when your child is wrong, you don't let them get away with it. That is a parent's responsibility, and that's where they learn their life lessons. And here's the bad news: their children are going to learn from their children, and it goes on, and that's why alcoholism and spousal abuse are so rampant in our country now. Those are learned behaviors with the children watching the parents and how they did it.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing, if you put this together the way I just did, what Dr. Richard Allen Miller just said, we're going to spiral into a worse and worse and worse behavior scenario. Is that what you're saying, Rick?
Yeah, you have to walk your talk. The difference between ethics and morals. Ethics, an ethical man knows not to cheat on his wife. A moral man won't.
Tell you an interesting story. So when our children were younger, one of them made it to the 6th grade before homeschooling. One of them made it to the 4th grade. And the one who made it all the way to the 4th grade, I knew his teacher. And we were friends. And with she and her husband and Mrs. Finelli and I were friends. And she told me one day, she said, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You know, something happened in school, and the teacher wanted to know who did it. And our son raised his hand, said, I did it. She said she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe that he admitted to doing something that was really not quite right. Now, I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't very serious at all. It was a minor infraction. But
he knew better.
She said, he knew better. He did it anyway, and he was very, very young, and the teacher couldn't believe that he owned up to it. Couldn't believe that he owned up to it, because no one else would do it. And he wasn't the only one. I guess there were several of them, but he's the only one that said, I was...
Acknowledged it, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was quite interesting that, you know, back then, we're talking in the 90s, that this happened. Well, I guess we're taught by our parents or by television or by the media or somewhere, maybe by experiences and watching, that it's okay to lie. Now, one of the things that I did when I was teaching is I had a contract with my students, and it was signed by them and their parents. Now, was the contract enforceable? I don't know. But here's what it said. It had many, many items, and one of the items of this contract said that a student will be removed from my class if that student lies. If that student lies. Now, one of the things that happened is I would, the first couple of days of my class, when I started teaching at the high school level, was, I'd see gum wrappers on the floor or little pieces of paper on the floor. And I'd stop the class immediately, and I'd look down like Columbo, who just saw something shiny and couldn't shake his attention from that thing he just saw. I'd look down, and I'd walk around it, and I'd stare at it, and then I'd point to it. And I'd say, there's a gum wrapper on the floor. And then the students would, they'd see me do this, and because Mr. Finelli was quiet, everybody looked my way. And they wanted to know what I was going to do, because I was just acting kind of strange, very quiet, stopping all talking, mesmerized by this thing on the floor. And I'd say, there's a piece of paper on the floor, or there's a gum wrapper on the floor. And what would happen is the students who would be circling around me, watching what I was doing, would all raise their hands in the surrender position, and the first thing they would say is, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. It's not mine. And I'd say, okay. But you didn't pick it up either. And you know what? Within a couple days, actually within a couple hours, we never had any more paper or anything on the floor. Because the students knew that I would do the same thing over and over and over until we fixed it. We'll be right back. Well, class, I'm kind of ranting about school system design.
Interject something.
Yeah.
Is okay.
Sure.
Grace Thorne, who's going to be coming to visit with me, just sent me an email and makes a very important point that my statement that parents teach their children to disrespect authority, because it sounds like Vincent was agreeing with me. No, not all parents teach their children that. That's correct. Some do not at all. In fact, some parents are appalled at the things their children do and say. Where did they learn how to do that? That's one of the reasons you send your children to public schools, is that they learn how to become social and get along with others in a mixed bag universe. I agree with Grace. There are a lot of parents that are appalled at what their children are doing. However, what I do think is happening is I think there needs to be a lot more attention on the parents in terms of the education they're getting. And from that point of view, I can say that today, the parents of today are quite lax in comparison to the parents of my generation when I was going to school. My parents, like you said, if I got punished at school, what happened at home was far greater. And that is no longer the case. And that the person that you quoted of that guy say, it's your problem, you fix it. Well, that's true and not true. You're not allowed to strike that child unless that child attacks you. That's where we need to start lowering the boom in terms of what a teacher is allowed to do. This political correctness that is now rampant in everything, where a teacher is hands are tied, I don't think is right. I remember the vice principal of every school I went to was the thug. And when, if you did something wrong, it was the vice principal that took you down to the woodshed. And when I say that, I mean, I got beaten, I got spanked, I got all kinds of things done to me that are no longer allowed in public schools. And from that point of view, that's what I'm suggesting. They're allowing children to be able to be disrespectful to an adult, and the adult has no recourse. And I remember you do that to an upperclassman, and that upperclassman had all kinds of things he could do to you that a teacher is not allowed to. Why? Because a teacher is supposed to set the example? That's okay. The other part of the example is, the way you train discipline is not through fear, but respect. And if there's no respect, that's where the force comes in, because everybody respects that.
And that respect has to be earned, not assumed.
That's right. That's why he's a teacher, not a student. That's exactly correct. That's why he's a teacher. And I think that the qualifications now required for a teacher are kind of embarrassing to me in terms of scholastics. When I watch, I don't know how it was in your high school, but in my high school, the football coach was also our janitor.
It wasn't like that in the high school I went to. However,
the one we did was Fred Sato. He taught judo at the universities and was an 8th degree Dan. That's where I got my 2nd degree black belt, was under him when I was 16 years old. And he was our football coach, and he was a janitor. Now, we walked down those halls a lot softer than we might have otherwise.
Right. My history teacher was a Golden Gloves boxer. And if you disagreed with the administration or the teachers, you would go to the gym with him. And you'd figure out...
Yeah, there it is. That's how it works. Yeah, go to the gym.
I went to an all-boys Jesuit high school. And
there you go.
we were told right right from wrong. Class, I'm going to give you a number. I'd like you to, if you want to weigh in on this discussion, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. When we come back, I've got a couple suggestions for school systems to consider. Also, class, if you want to fix it, run for school board office. I've done it. I've lost, but I've tried. So I suggest that you consider running for school board office and start saying no to some of the ridiculous things that are happening in your neck of the woods. Dr. Richard Allen Miller and I will be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Rick, I've got a couple short comments. You know, you're talking about the door jams of schools during the first hour of this broadcast today. It reminded me of the panic bars. Those are those push bars on the doors that let the students push them and then the door opens. They're called panic bars. And they're panic bars for a reason. So if there's an emergency, you can just kind of almost run into it and the door will swing open outward. Well, a lot of times in schools, those panic bars are chained shut. The custodians, the janitors are told, you've got to keep those doors locked so people don't come in the back doors. Well, here's an answer for that. Schools, avoid these mega schools. Okay? You should be able to design a school such that two teachers standing in the intersection of 4 hallways, north, south, east, and west. One teacher per hallway. So if you have a school that'll hold, maybe 1,500, 2,000 students, you have 8 hallways. And 2 teachers can stand in each of 4, 2 teachers can each stand in an intersection that would be of 4 hallways. So 2 teachers can supervise the movement of students during class changing time. Okay, just 2 teachers. Or the principal and the vice principal can do that. And that's their job. It's not to hide in the offices. Their job is to be with the students and be proactive. Okay, next, no mega schools. No mega schools. That means that you need to, when your county decides that they're going to have a new school being built and they have meetings to tell the public about what's going to happen, you go there. And then you say, wait a minute. Why are you doing this? Why are you designing it that way? It seems kind of odd to me, and challenge their designs. And let me give an example of that. I was a computer consultant for many school districts in the Commonwealth of Virginia back in the 1990s and early 2000. Well, I went into, they built a new school for one of the districts I was a consultant for, and they invited me to network the computer laboratory that had just been built. They did not ask for my advice, counsel, or suggestions or opinions prior to building the school. So I got to see it during construction, the final phases of construction. So I was walking into this room, and it's like a theater. And it's the computer laboratory, and it's on tiers. So there's the first level, so students will walk up a step or 2, and they'll be on the first level of this classroom, maybe 10 students wide. And then you go a couple more steps up, and you're at the second level or tier, 10 students wide. And you go 5 or 6 levels, and that is the computer lab. Down at the floor level, at the lowest level, where the blackboard or whiteboard is, that's where the teacher would teach from. It's an idiotic design, in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. Because the teacher, and there were, we'll call them modesty guards, so you couldn't see the students' legs if you were teaching. So now we have students in a row that you can't see what they're doing. You can just see their head and shoulders and the back of their computer screens. So the teacher is teaching and has no idea what the students are doing. No idea. Very, very poor design. So who designed it? Obviously not a teacher. An architect would design that who probably has never been a teacher. Now, when I taught computer science and when I designed computer laboratories, there was one level. I took an existing classroom and I put the computers around the perimeter walls. So, and I got the students rolling chairs, little chairs with rollers, and the students would face the wall, which would be facing their monitor. And I could see their backs. Now, when I had something to say or teach them, they would just swivel that rolly chair, and they would look at me. And I could see them looking at me. And when they were doing their work on their computers, I could see their work. They didn't need to see me when they were working. I needed to see them to help them. I could see when they needed help, if they were understanding what I was saying, if they were confused, if they were stuck, and it really worked. And it was nowhere near the expense of building a theater that was a poor design. So, class, I suggest that you get involved in the design of your schools. I suggest that you run for school board office. And getting back to Grace Thorne, she was an excellent teacher from my perspective. My perspective was remote. I never saw her in class. However, I was on the end of the headphones listening to her class while her class was well behaved in the school conference room in Ryan, Oklahoma.
Yeah, that was an excellent period in our radio history. I appreciated Terry and others that were out on the West Coast. It was a very special time where these kids had an opportunity to be on national radio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, you and I still have the awards they gave us. Mine, I'm looking at it right now.
Yes,
mine says no whining. It's a plaque that was handmade, and each one of the students who was in our 6th grade radio broadcast classroom from Ryan, Oklahoma, signed the back of it. And it's,
I know, I have one too. It's wonderful.
And, you know, Rick, there's something sad, and I think we should, even though it's, negative, I think we should let our broadcast classroom know this. That I asked Grace Thorne, what the other teachers thought about what we were doing. And class, here's what we did. The students would spend a month, and during that month, they would, during their other studies, they would think about things that they'd like to ask Dr. Richard Allen Miller, things that they did not learn in school, did not learn in home. They could ask a physicist, or they could ask a medical doctor like Dr. Norman Shealy, who did it with us as well. They could ask questions of the experts, whatever they wanted to know. No holds barred. 6th graders. And they use that.
The best question that I was asked, it's funny. If pigs are so smart, how come parrots can talk and pigs can't? And my response was, well, when a pig wants to make a notice on something, he sure knows how to get your attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Bird brain came to mind.
Yes. The children...
The kid got it. It was wonderful. He got it. Subliminals, body movement, squealing, itching, moving. There's lots of ways of communicating besides words. Well,
the sad part of that is that Grace Thorne is no longer in that school system, and she retired, and that no other teacher stepped up to be with us. As a matter of fact, no other teacher really cared about what we were doing, and none of the parents were interested in listening to the broadcast, which they could pick up on YouTube. They could pick it up on GCNlive.com. They could go to the podcast. They could listen to their children. None of the parents was interested in finding out what their son or daughter had done that day in class. The principal wasn't interested, and neither was the assistant principal.
I remember that period. That was an embarrassment.
Now, from my perspective, I thought it was the coolest thing. I really did.
Yeah, Grace was cool. And the kids, they were... I wonder how they're doing now. Each one of those, it would be nice someday to have follow-up, to have continuity of knowing what that moment did for their life.
I just took the plaque off the wall, and so we've got Samantha and Lily and Kayla and Cammie and Olivia and Gabby, Mackenzie, Brooke, Snyder, Walter, Gunner.
Wow, what a trip that was. Where do you think he got that name from? Exactly. It sparked the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a great period. And I just, for the life of me, Rick, I don't understand why it didn't catch on. I can't understand.
make sense, no, because that was what Linkletter did. Kids asked the darndest things. And that could have actually become a role model for other radio stations around the country, allowing children to expand in areas that were not accessible otherwise.
You know, here's what I don't understand. I don't understand why the other teachers didn't storm the principal's office in Ryan, Oklahoma, in the elementary school, and say, hey, who does Grace Thorne think she is? Taking all of these radio guys' time. Who does she think she is? You know, she needs to share that with us, you know, even though she was the first. Even though she was a principal and getting this launched, you know, she can't have all that time. She's got to share it with us. It never happened. It never happened.
Well, however, hasn't happened. Actually, Grace is coming out to form a band of tribe to go after the educational system here. And I'm hoping my girlfriend causes changes, because there have been 4 generations of good old boy networking here, and it shows. Law enforcement is broken, medical is broken, education is broken. That means it's beyond repair. I find individuals within law enforcement and education that are unique and are trying to make a difference, but because of the good old boy infrastructure, I have letters of recommendation from Road Community College when I taught back when I first moved here in the 80s. And they had invested over $100,000 in trying to get an educational program around agriculture, and they couldn't do it. And I came in without any money and summarily did it for the entire Southern Oregon and Northern California. It happened. And it happened just because of one individual, me. And the thing is, today I walked in to the brand new president of Road Community College and their school board, and they have no interest. And what they're doing is they're moving the nursing program that they had. They had a nursing program that I taught at. I taught actually biofeedback that's now being used at all the domiciliaries here locally.
Hold that thought. 866-582-9933 if you want to weigh in. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Class, if you'd like to go to his website, I suggest you go to richardallenmiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. We're going to take some calls, and then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to start into a subject about reality, or an illusion of reality. Robert in Kansas, welcome. You're on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Hello, Vincent. Hello, Dr. Miller.
Hi there.
Hi. I wanted to suggest to you that the education system is not what you think it is, and that, in fact, it is designed to arrest the consciousness of the individual and to limit the development of the mind, as opposed to you may be seeing it as the exact opposite of that. And the way that they do this is that they essentially teach lies. And the reason they teach lies is because truth leads to consciousness, and consciousness leads to freedom. And the system we are in, the one thing they don't want you to be is free, and to actually understand the world that you live in. And so, in my opinion, if you really knew what the schools were, you would never send your kids there at all. That
You're not getting any
Go ahead.
You're not getting any disagreements from me.
No, I kind of, unfortunately, have to agree in many aspects of that, yes. However, the child's mind is so bright at that age that it's, even with all of their attempts, there are still creepy people like me getting out of there alive.
Robert, my dad was a principal and a teacher, and for me and Mrs. Finelli to take our children out of the public training camp. He was a public educator. Was almost a sacrilege. He couldn't believe it. However, as he learned more and more about the public training camp and what a waste of time it is, he agreed.
I remember in graduate school, I had a professor that played tennis. And on Sunday mornings at 6 in the morning, I was out on the tennis court working away at my tennis ball. And this professor came up to me and said, "Gee, Mr. Miller, with your grades, I wouldn't have expected to see you out here on the tennis courts." And so what I did is I promptly executed him on the court so that he wasn't in the tournament, went on to win the tournament, and he's the only C I ever got in graduate school. And guess what the subject was? Electromagnetic resonance.
Robert, Robert, we've got another caller, so I'm gonna have to let you go. Please feel free to call back another time.
Sure thing, Vince. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Nice talking to you, sir.
Yeah. Okay, Bob in Michigan. Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, I got to agree with that last caller, too. In fact, that was one of the points I was going to bring up that about schools. I kind of disagree with one thing Dr. Miller was saying, that it's nice for the kids to go to school so they can learn to socialize. Yeah, right. They can learn to become part of a herd.
Well, I didn't do that, but yes, I needed to learn how to get along because I could have been an idiot savant and talked in syllables.
Yeah.
And that's what going to a public school, what they wanted to do was advance me in school. And my mother absolutely would not let them do that. The first thing they wanted to do is give me drugs so I was normal. Yeah,
well, weren't you lucky?
That, man.
No, anyhow, I mean, forcing these kids to go to school. Here they're taught, all their life, America stands for freedom, except when you're a kid and you're forced to go to a socializing.
They used to threaten me with parochial school if I didn't behave. I actually have a report card in 3rd grade that says, Ricky, oh yeah, they call me Ricky. Ricky is very disruptive. He asks too many questions.
Bob,
my 4th grade teacher required me to stay after school every night until I could read, because I didn't read until 4th grade.
Hold that thought. Bob, thanks so much for being with us.
I moved around. I started with Palau and Tagalog as my primary languages, not English.
Class, very quick announcement. This afternoon at 4 o'clock Central Time, I'm going to be on with Bill Deagle. And I'm going to suggest that you consider some things that I know firsthand that absolutely positively work. Tips for your home that I've never heard anyone else on the radio talk about. Seriously. So these are tips that are kind of neat. I think you'll be quite surprised at what we're going to talk about today. That's 4 o'clock Central Time this afternoon on Dr. Bill Deagle's show, Genesis Communications Radio Network. George in New Hampshire, welcome. You're on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller.
Hi, Vincent. Hi, Dr. Miller.
Hey.
I just wanted to say two things. One thing fast, and then I'll get off. I had a Boy Scout troop one time many years ago when I was young. And as the years went by in the community, I'd see those same kids that I had take camp and go around, try to teach them certain things about, the woods, everything else. And I noticed, it dawned on me one time, I was walking across a parking lot. There were a bunch of guys around. Now, this is like they were in their mid-20s. And I guess for some reason they started giving me a hard time, and I wasn't doing anything. They started me. He goes, all of a sudden, out of the crowd, this young man came out. He says, you leave that man alone. He's a good man. He's my scoutmaster. Now, this is like about 15 years after the fact. They all backed off. And it dawned on me, by spending time with them and showing that, hey, I cared about them, I really cared about the boys. They were good kids. And sacrificing a little bit of my time to do something for them. in the ways it came back, and when I'd run into them, I noticed other people couldn't seem to talk to them a lot of times, but they'd stop and they'd listen to me because I don't want to say earned their respect, but they gave me their respect. And that's all I wanted to say about it as far as teaching. And I know you and Dr. Rick have a lot more to talk about. So you take care, gentlemen.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for that, by the way. That's an excellent point.
And I think George did earn the respect. I've had a chance
he's earned mine.
Yeah, I've had a chance to talk to George many times on the air and off the air. And class, who is George in New Hampshire? George was at one time a student, just like many. And he would call in, and I liked what he had to say. And then I asked for his phone number off the air. I asked our engineer to get his phone number. He got his phone number. I called him. I liked so much what he had to say, he became an instructor. And that's the kind of guy that I thought George was. And now you've heard it firsthand. He's a guy that is willing to help others at no compensation. He was willing to help these young men, and obviously it had an impact, as you heard firsthand. I heard it firsthand that for the first time just now, just as you did. Rick, my grandfather and grandmother back in the 1950s and 60s had a cabinet where they stored their glasses, and in one of the glasses was a few stirrers. These were rods made out of glass with a rounded tip, and if you had a beverage, you could put this glass rod in and stir the beverage. And I remember my grandfather stirring clockwise coffee. I remember him stirring other beverages in glasses clockwise with a stirrer. He was hydrogenating his beverage, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm. He is counteracting the spin of the Earth, what is called Coriolis forces, which destructures water just because of the nature of the way it goes down a drain. And what you're trying to do is counteract that force so that the water itself is more balanced. And when you do that, it restructures and hydrogenates the water. Yes.
Okay, so it's as simple as stirring clockwise. Now, how long would you recommend if I'm going to...
the rat study that I did that made the rats live forever took 3 weeks of stirring. That's the protocol. But you don't need to do that long. But I'm writing an article for Nexus Magazine exactly on how to make C60 fullerene olive oil water in your kitchen. And what that will do at any age, even at my age of 70, I'm 74, will most likely add an additional 20 years onto your life expectancy. At almost any age. It repairs telomerase, the fraying in telomerase. It is a super antioxidant, and when you see what it does in the gut, where you're outside space-time, that's your future timeline, the hierarchy, thinking with intuition. Watch what it does there. It's the foods that you eat and whom you feed. And that oxygenation, that hydrogen, extra hydrogen, makes all the difference in the world in terms of memory in your muscle and your body.
Think about the revolt that the government corporation is going to have when they figure out that it can add 20 years to your life, and then they figure out that, Social Security, that's another 20 years of payout. This isn't going to work. We're going to have to stop this in 60.
Leave it to you, man.
Rick, I was reading an article that you have written called The Illusion of Reality. I've got a comment about this. So there are many times in my life when I've said, am I dreaming or is this real? Let me give you an example. So something really great happens and I wonder, is this real or is this an illusion? When something really bad happens, like someone dies, and you go, am I dreaming that person just died? This is horrible. This is awful. This is one of the worst things that could ever happen in my life. Did that really happen? Am I dreaming, or is this real? Rick, you wrote an article that is available to watch or to read on the internet called wakingtimes.com, WAKINGTIMES.com, The Illusion of Reality.
I'm only allowing them and others to reprint that in partial. If they want the full article, they need to go to Nexus, because Ruth Parnell is possibly the finest editor in the world I've ever had. And Duncan Rhodes, I can't say enough about him in promoting my work and defending me as part of his stable. I'll say it this way. Ruth is in the hospital right now, and I'm concerned about her, and my best wishes toward her swift recovery. But she is able to, with my writings, she would make good writings great and great writings classic. And in this article, it has overtaken Europe. I mean, we're talking about blowing everybody's mind, because, in fact, what I do is it is 3 parts of a 10-part series in just Chapter 7. Chapter 7 had 10 parts. This is just 3 parts of 10 parts in Chapter 7 of the new manuscript, The Non-Local Mind in a Holographic Universe, How to Change the Movie. And the next article I'm hoping will come out in the next month will be on how psyche is brought into matter, how your thought physically goes into matter and makes it so. Because what we are experiencing right now is a very small portion of reality. It is a dream state. In fact, there are dream states at night that you go to that are far more real in terms of content and of reality and truth than our normal waking state. Lucid dreaming is one. This is where we go back home to the multiverse and renew. And there are purposes and reasons for different kinds of dreams. And this article addresses that issue and how to use them in a daily waking life to manipulate and move forward, going toward purpose and while you're actually physically here.
You know, so Rick, when I had these experiences in my life that I've described as, am I dreaming or is this real? What does one do with that?
Well, you have lots of options. That's what made you God's favored, is you have choice on how you decide to do that and what you're going to do about those thoughts. That's what constitutes the issue between, ethics and morals, and what makes you uniquely distinct from a machine.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller, who are the readers of Nexus, the alternative news magazine?
I would think almost anyone that appreciates my talk. I am just one of many top writers that they sponsor on all different subjects around health and the unknown and the unexplained.
Do you think the editor would consider coming on the air with us and telling us more about? Yeah.
Sure. Duncan's in Brisbane, so he's, in the middle of a heat wave right now in Brisbane. When I say heat wave, they have a picture of the Earth, and then they have a line going to the sun, and then they have an arrow dropping down somewhere closer to the sun than Earth, saying this is where the Brisbane is located. They're in a heat wave right now, a terrible, terrible heat wave. The Earth is actually going through some debris from Jupiter. The Earth does not circle the sun. The sun is moving at a fairly good clip through the universe, and is right now going right through the debris trail of Jupiter and its last eruptions, and the Earth is in a spiral around the sun and going through that debris trail, and that's why we have so many asteroids, and we have so much weather changes. There's a pole shift, a magnetic pole shift going on right now, and coronal mass ejections from the sun. The sun is changing because of its also encountering dragon tails or ionized streamers in deep space, and going through debris trails from Jupiter.
So, Rick, are we in harm's way, in serious harm's way, because of this debris trail?
I don't know that I would call it harm's way, because what do you think death is?
Well, what I was thinking about...
It would be waking up. So, if the end of the Earth, is that the end of things or the beginning of waking up?
Hold that thought. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Class, if you'd like to go to his Facebook page, docram.com, docram.com. If you'd like to peruse his offerings for books, you can go to richardallenmiller.com, richardalan Miller.com. Rick, we were talking about the debris field from Jupiter, and
well, that's just from suspicious observers. You know, there's lots of good resources on this if you vet it out. And I'm just one person trying to find credible sources, and then I post them on Facebook like I do. Yesterday I went crazy, so I have a lot of posts on Facebook from last night. But, you know, just trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Okay, let's talk about what's on the other side of the moon.
You mean that crashed spaceship? It's probably Buddhist. That's what I think. When you start realizing the technology that Tibetan Buddhism represents, including the last choice in the Bordeaux Thedal, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the last grand illusion is the choice man has at the moment of death of either going through the tunnel of light, where all your friends are there waiting for you, or the blue light. And the tunnel of light can be likened to a birth canal as you're coming back into this dream. Reincarnation, whatever way you care to place it. My girlfriend has a very strong attraction to her dog that died recently. And she knows he's waiting for her in heaven. It's true. And she's going to have a choice of either coming back into this reality again to visit her dog or to merge with her dog. The best thing to do, if you're very close to your animal, is if you have the need to ever put the animal dog, do what I did. Take their last breath inward, because at the moment of death, there is a 5-gram weight loss. Sir Roger Penrose at Princeton suggests that it's structured water in a microtubule, which is also in Chinese systems called qi. And you take that in, and that animal will be with you forever.
Fascinating. You know, during one of the breaks, I ran out of the studio, ran outside, and we have a calf, a couple weeks old. Bessie is her name, and we bottle feed this calf because her mother didn't seem to know what to do with her, and it was freezing cold. So we picked her up, made a little pen in the garage, and we go and see her all the time. She goes outside. We have a big playpen for her. It's it's the size of a 3-car garage, and she can run around, and we go see her. And at night we put her in, because it's freezing cold, until she becomes acclimated. And so I give her a hug, and I call her over, and she comes running over. She's actually leash trained now, where she goes for walks with with the family. We just put her on a leash, and just like a big dog right now. She's probably getting close to 150 pounds. But animals are important, and we love our animals, and they seem to love us back. Kind of a nice feeling. That's one of the joys of being a farmer.
Talk to your animals. They will talk back to you. You know, a dog's eye expression is far more communicative than anything we've got in our own language.
Yeah, a neighbor over a couple miles away kidnapped some of our cows years ago, and I proved to the authorities that they were my cows. Couldn't even see them. He had them in the back of 40. I mean, way hidden. And I said, well, let me call him. So I said, come on, which is the call that I use. And the cows, they knew it was Dad, and they came running. They wanted to be with their dad. And that's what happens when you when you love the animals and you show them love and affection, you spend time with them and you talk to them.
You got to watch how an animal hugs you back.
Yeah. They rub up against you. They hug you. Yeah. TJ, our mastiff, if I'm sitting on a couch, he'll lean and then he'll like lie on top of me lie on top of my legs. He likes his hugs.
I really appreciate working radio with you.
I appreciate radio with you, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Thanks so much for being with us. See you next week, right here, same time, same station. Dr. Richard Allen Miller.